All right, welcome to those joining. Just give a moment for people to get their audio settled in before we start. It looks like a good critical mass, so we'll make sure we type this out for people that don't have their audio settled yet or that are coming in a little bit later, but welcome to today's webinar. Before we get started, I just want to mention that if you haven't joined us for one of these user group meetings before, this is Zoom webinar, not Zoom meeting. So your cameras and microphones are disabled by default. And it means if you want to interact with the panel today, you've got to use either the Q&A or the chat. Specifically with the chat, if you want everyone to see what you've written, you'll have to select all panelists and attendees. Otherwise, it will only go to the panel. So without further ado, I want to hand it off to Melanie Gottlieb.
Thanks, Mike. Good afternoon. I'm Melanie Gottlieb, Deputy Director of ACRO, and I would like to welcome you to this month's EDGE user group. It's a pleasure to be with all of you this afternoon. As always, we're hopeful that our technology will not fail us. This is a large Zoom call, and all of us, like many of you, continue to work at home at the mercies of our home Wi-Fi. So with me today, I have two colleagues. Next slide. I have Drew Carlisle, who is Assistant Director at ACRO for EDGE Development. And I also have Robert Watkins from UT Austin, who is on the Iesc. Next slide. The Iesc, which is the International Education Standards Council, is the council that makes the placement recommendations and vets the grading scales for EDGE. Next slide. The Iesc is composed of representatives from public and private institutions of higher education and also from leading credential evaluation agencies. The group collects research, does reviews, and prepares to approve new recommendations for credentials, grading scales, and does work on some content for country profiles in the ACRO EDGE database. Placement recommendations in the EDGE database represent a majority consensus among the members of the Iesc and therefore tend to represent a majority consensus for the US. Next slide. So before we launch on the agenda, I would like to take a check and see who we have in the audience. So I'm going to launch a poll. You will see a pop-up. And I'm asking, what segment of the field do you represent? Are you institutional staff? Are you evaluation service staff? Are you government staff or law firm? Is this your first EDGE user group, or are you a repeat? And are you an EDGE subscriber? I'm going to give it just another couple of seconds here because it looks like most people have voted. And I am going to go ahead and, oh, well, no, we have one more burst here. All right, I'm going to go ahead and end the polling. And it looks like the majority of folks, 87%, are institutional staff. We do have some evaluation service and government staff. The majority of folks, more than 71%, have been at a user group before. And almost all of you are EDGE subscribers. There are a couple of you who have joined us who are not. So we hope that if you are not an EDGE subscriber and you would like to trial it, you can reach out after this webinar and we'll happily provide a little test credentials. And I see a question, and I'm going to go ahead and address this right off, even though we haven't done the agenda. And that's talking about some access issues. Yes, so the last couple of days, and we're not sure what's going on, but the ACRO website as a whole has been having some trouble. And unfortunately, EDGE is housed in the ACRO website platform. We are working really closely with our vendor. It's not that it's down, but it is loading incredibly slowly. So if you have been having trouble, please be patient. We hope to have it resolved as soon as possible. We're not sure where the problem is. It doesn't seem to be within our system. It may be within the cloud grid that we're in somewhere. I'm not really sure, but we are absolutely working on it, and hopefully we'll have it resolved quite soon. So here's our agenda for the day. We're going to talk about the latest content updates. We're going to talk about sort of profiles and research updates. We are going to talk about the new EDGE user guide and how to connect with your colleagues in the EDGE community. We're going to talk about the Iesc fellowship program because the deadline is coming soon, and we hope that some of you might apply to join. And then also we're going to talk about the International Education Research Fund, and we'll have some Q&A. So on that, I will turn the mic over to my colleague, Drew.
Hey, thank you, Melanie. And thank you all for joining us today. So a couple of the things that we wanted to go over were some of the latest content updates, the things that the IESC has been working on. Now, one of the things that we understand is that it's very helpful to have placement recommendations so you can understand one possible way to understand a credential in the context of the US system. Now, what we also recognize is that there's no way to exactly compare one system to another. So we use these general placement recommendations to try to show that there is general guidance despite that significant difference. And we've come up with a list of standard sort of responses to help you understand. As you go through EDGE, you'll notice that a particular credential represents attainment of a level of education comparable to, and this is something that the IESC has arrived at, again, by consensus. This is driven by everyone getting into a room and discussing this and figuring out what the majority opinion is. It does represent that consensus opinion across higher education. And we actually, one of our members, Johnny Johnson, just put together a new and updated list for everyone to use. You're not going to see significant changes on your side of things, but it's going to make it much easier for the IESC to provide that guidance for you. Now, in terms of new credentials that we've published on EDGE within the last few weeks, we have dived deep into Nepal and looked at some various nursing credentials there: the Proficiency Certificate in Nursing, the Bachelor of Science in Nursing, the Post-Basic Bachelor, and the Master of Science as well. All of those placement recommendations, they are available on the website. As Melanie mentioned, it's taking a little bit longer to load right now, and I apologize for those difficulties, but you would be able to go in once you've logged into your account. If you scroll down just a little bit on that front page, you'll see the flag of Nepal, and it'll take you right to the list where we have all of those new placement recommendations provided there. Another thing that we really wanted to highlight is that there was a clarification that we felt needed to be made in Granada. TA Mary Show Community College is right now the only post-secondary institution that's overseen by the Ministry of Education, Human Resource Development, Religious Affairs, and Information, which is a change in the name for their Ministry of Education. It's been a relatively recent change. Now, there are other schools that operate there, but they are neither recognized nor overseen by that Ministry of Education. And there will be more information about some of these schools, these offshore medical schools, that are going to be talked about at our upcoming annual meeting. The IESC fellows, who we briefly alluded to the fellowship, one of the things that they've been working on is this research project, diving deep into a better understanding of the offshore medical schools. Can we see the next slide, please? And we wanted to talk a little bit about some of the features that are going to make it easier for you to access all of the information that we house within EDGE. This is, as some of you are aware, we launched this new system last summer, and we've now got some helpful user guide videos that are up. From every page within Acro EDGE, if you scroll to the top, there's a link to the user guide, and you can go in and you can see information on how to use that new credential search feature, where you can more quickly filter through that long list of credentials. you no longer have to go through page by page. You can find exactly what you're looking for. Be sure to use the correct accented, the correct name of the credential using appropriate accents so that you can find what you need. We've got a video that gives you the advice for how to find the recognition status of an institution. And that involves going back to the primary source, going back in-country resources, and that's where you're going to find that. We put together a little video because that's a common question that we hear from EDGE subscribers. There's information on where to find those archived country studies that are no longer in print, but are available through Acro Edge. Really helpful for when you're looking at a credential that's a little bit older, or you just need a little bit of context for understanding how an education system has developed over time. There's also information on where to find sample documents, but to give you a shortcut, it's listed on the credential itself. Navigate through, find the credential that you're looking for, and if we have a sample, you'll find it just to the left of, just on the left-hand column of that particular credential. I would really recommend using our new My Bookmarks feature, because if you need to follow what's going on in a particular country, looking for particular updates, this is something that My Bookmarks will alert you to on the next time you log in following an update. So for those of you that have been tracking Nepal, have an existing bookmark for Nepal, if you logged in today, you would have been notified that yesterday, these placement recommendations for the nursing credentials would have shown up if that was the first time you'd logged in since it had been posted. And there's also information in there about other country updates and emergent news. Country updates are going to be substantive updates to grading scales. They're going to be new placement recommendations for if we edit on a credential. Emergent news is something where we're tracking important news articles from all around the world. Our international news content curator, Jonathan Cao Nguyen, has actually been doing something really exciting with emergent news. Next Tuesday, or this Tuesday, I guess would be a better way to describe it. This Tuesday in our upcoming issue of Connect, there's actually going to be information on the international exam schedule. And what's been happening as he's been finding these articles that are mentioning the status of various exams from all around the world. Are they delayed? Are they still going to be moving forward? Are results going to be posted in a different way or provided in a different way? As he's finding all this information, it's getting assembled into one document, and you'll be able to find out more information about that. It's for EDGE subscribers in the upcoming article of Connect, like I said, on Tuesday. And the other thing that's in those new EDGE user guide videos is information on how to actually add other subscribers onto your account. It is a new system. You can always email us at edge@acro.org or use the contact us button from every page within EDGE. But if you're the EDGE manager, there's a video that walks you through how to do that yourself, in case you don't want to talk to a person. Next slide, please. So I just mentioned that you can reach out to us at edge@acro.org with any of your questions. The contact us button that you'll find on every page within Acro Edge, that's what you can use when you need to reach out for customer service issues. And it's also how you can reach out if there needs to be an addition or an edit within Acro Edge. We really appreciate all of the comments and questions that have been coming in, and the Iesc takes care of those in the order in which they're received. Now, when you reach out to the Iesc and there's something that you feel should be included within EDGE, we really appreciate your rationale. And so if you want to talk about a new grading scale, please do provide documents redacted so that the students' information is kept private, of course, and any other sources that go along with that if you found it in a particular bulletin put out by a government. If there's a credential that you feel merits inclusion, we would love to see that, because really being able to review those transcripts, not just the certificate itself, but looking at those transcripts is how the Iesc will be able to make that determination. So again, redacted documents and your sources, please send those over. And if you think that there's an updated resource that needs to be included, send that source over and we will evaluate that for inclusion within Acro Edge. Now, alternatively, if this is a question about developing your own institutional policy, I would recommend the International Activities Listserv. On every page within Acro Edge, if you scroll down to the bottom, there's information on how you can join that listserv. And when you reach out to that listserv, you're going to connect with evaluation agents. You're going to connect with admissions officers, Acro employees, people that run the gamut across higher education and that deal with all types of questions in international education. Um, I would use that as when you have a question about a particular credential, that's not about something that needs to be included in EDGE, but is more a question of policy and how you implement that yourself. I would also suggest that you go and check that resources tab within Acro Edge to see if the information that you need is right there. There is information on how to find the recognition status of institutions within that resources tab. Can we see the next slide, please? I alluded to it a little bit earlier, but I'm going to let my colleague Melanie speak just a bit more on the value of the IESC Fellowship Program, whose deadline for submission is this Monday, February 22nd. Melanie?
Thanks so much, Drew. As we mentioned before, and if you have been on these user group webinars before, you may have heard of our IESC Fellowship Program. The program is a very specific mentorship program designed for people within the first 5 years of their career in international credential evaluation. And what this program does, we select 2 fellows per year. And these fellows work very closely, attend the IESC meetings, are able to participate in the in-depth discussion and debate that happens around credentials and around placement recommendations. And they're also assigned a research project, and they have mentoring to complete that research project, and then are able to present that project either in a webinar or at annual meeting, or depending on the project, it might publish as a white paper with lots of opportunities to share that knowledge. And it allows someone to get a sense of what it means to be engaged in a more deep way with international credential evaluation research. And so that deadline is Monday, February 22nd. We hope to see more of you apply. We do have some applications, and it is competitive, but we would love to see more of you apply. The other thing to note is that this is not this is a professional development opportunity that is free. And so it doesn't cost you anything to become an IESC fellow. And it is something that you will have to put on your resume, and also that will help connect you with seasoned, very experienced credential evaluation professionals. And so our fellows, we've had a couple of webinars in the past that our fellows have shared their experiences with the program. We have had really great experiences with the fellows. They have found it to be really rewarding, and we're excited to be able to continue to do that. So again, that application is due on Monday, February 22nd. It is not a particularly long application, so I would encourage you to check it out if this seems to be of interest, or if you have a colleague that you work with that you think that this would be a great fit for, please share it and recommend that to them. Next slide. Now, the other opportunity for research that we have is the Gloria Nathanson Research Fund for International Education. This is a fund that ACRO has put together that gives awards of up to $1,000 to support international education research. We know that people aren't doing a lot of travel right now, but that will change eventually. There are also other expenses that you might have to do research, and this is a great place to get a mini grant to complete an in-depth research project. We will fund, we're pretty open, we will fund lots of different kinds of research that's deemed to be something that would be useful to the field. So it might be a country profile, it might be a substantive country update, it might be an in-depth white paper on something you're particularly interested in, a certain kind of education, engineering or nursing or law or whatever topic you might have. And so if you have thoughts about it, I would encourage you to go ahead and apply. These awards are reviewed on a rolling basis, and we do have some funding available. So we would love to see a few more projects being funded through this research grant. Next slide. So I have one other thing that I want to share that is brand new and is just about to launch. We've been working at ACRO for a long time on developing substantive coursework on how to do a number of credential evaluation baseline topics. And this is something we've been working on now for about a year and a half before COVID. But COVID has absolutely helped us focus and get these launched. And so we will be launching next month new online courses. And these are self-paced entry-level courses. They are developed by ACRO faculty. They'll be affordable. They're self-paced with stackable modules. They'll be integrated with digital badging, and as you complete these courses, you'll earn a digital badge that you can display on your LinkedIn profile or in your email signature line and add to your resume. We'll be launching 10 in March, and we have lots more developed in the pipeline and lots more exciting things thinking about credentialing in the international credential evaluation field. And so you'll hear a lot more this year about all of our plans. So stay tuned, watch for this launch. They should be launching right around the 8th of March. Next slide. So next I want to get some questions. We had some questions submitted in advance, so I have a few of those. We also have some questions in the Q&A box. And so I'd like to address one first that is more current here, asking about, this is from Denise Wilson. If a specific qualification isn't listed, should we assume it isn't equivalent to anything, or should we bring the qualification to the attention of EDGE to ensure it's evaluated in the future? And is there a list of qualifications that are waiting to be reviewed so we can see if the qualification is on it? So I'm going to give a beginning answer, and then I think I'm going to toss it to Drew and or Robert to see if they have anything to add. The first answer is, if you find that there is a credential that is not included in EDGE, and it is it appears to be a university pathway credential, please go ahead and share that with us. Use the contact us or the submit an update feature that is on every page in the EDGE database, and we will get it into the queue to be reviewed. Right now, there is not a transparent way for us to share what's in the review queue, but I will take that away as a possible enhancement in the future, although I don't have anything right now. Robert, I see that you unmuted. You might have something to add to that?
Sure, thanks, Melanie. Hi, all. She's absolutely right. The EDGE agenda, we meet every 2 weeks. The EDGE admin group, the Iesc, by telephone. The agenda is dynamic, so it may have something of long-standing nature that we're researching, that we're working on, and then suddenly you guys out in the field find something and send it in to us that suddenly scrambles our agenda, and we add it quickly, and we try to get after it as quickly as possible. So the answer is for one thing, for sure, get in touch with us and tell us about what you found. Secondly, and we'll do two things. We'll respond to you specifically, your question, and the other thing will be to begin the research and the work, add it to the agenda, see if we can get something in EDGE as quickly as possible regarding this new credential that you have found. Well, let me just kind of conclude this by saying all the wonderful features of EDGE are amazing. But there are two challenges that we encounter. Number one, when we rolled this out 15 years ago, believe it or not, we did so in a hurry because we knew what we wanted to produce, but we didn't know how important it was to have every single piece of it out there and ready to go, or it would never have gotten out. So we hurriedly got it out, and then we started to flesh it out a little bit better based on comments from you, things we found, and so forth. The second challenge we have is that educational systems amazingly are fairly dynamic, which is one of the wonderful pieces of Edge as compared to the books that I worked on when I first started in the field more than a few years ago. And that is, we can get this new information into Edge fairly quickly, but countries change. We have to know about it, and we're not getting all the cases that you're getting across your desk. So you need to let us know about it so that we can investigate it. We will respond to you, and we will see about getting it into Edge if it belongs there.
And Robert, just to piggyback on that, where you mentioned that we are going to respond directly, this is another great place where you can use that My Bookmarks feature, because if we do update something within Acro Edge, that is a new grading scale, that's a new placement recommendation, that's a significant new resource. If you're following that country that you've submitted a question on, you're going to be alerted even before the IESC has an opportunity to respond to you. It's a volunteer organization of professionals that care deeply about making sure there's good information in for international education, and it's something that I would just ask you to understand that their agenda can grow and grow and grow, and your question is valuable. And just because you haven't received an immediate response does not mean that they are not working on it, does not mean that your answer is not coming. Just wanted to put that out there.
Thanks, Drew.
Excellent. Thank you, Drew. And I apologize, my internet just got a little wonky. Here we go. So I'm going to jump to some of the questions that we received before the meeting, and we'll go back and forth. Here's the first one. When I receive a grading scale that differs from what Edge has posted, how can I crosswalk from the IESC's guidance to the different scale? Who would like to take that one? Is that for you?
I'll jump on that, Melanie.
Thanks.
All aspects of international education comparabilities excite me, which I guess is why I've been in this field for so long. But one of the things that I really enjoy doing is coming across a grading scale that I haven't seen before and having to figure out what am I going to do. My first response then to the questioner is, number one, just as we talked about a moment ago with respect to the new credential, with a new grading scale, please alert us as quickly as possible so that we can do two things. And very similar to what I said before on the other question. Number one, so that we can respond to you. And secondly, so that we can get this on the agenda and see about getting it into Edge as quickly as possible. We actually have recently grappled with some new grading scales and are finalizing some of these that will go into Edge. So it's a critical issue that we like to try and keep on top of. Now let's address the question itself. In the meanwhile, before we respond to you and before it gets into Edge, what am I going to do today with this on my desk? And the answer to that would be, well, use your analytical logic skills and start by looking at the descriptors. How did they describe the tiers of this grading scale that you see before you? Pretty quickly, you'll determine a couple of things. You'll see what the best is, and you'll see what the worst is. You'll see what the failure grade or numbers are, and you'll see what the excellent and the high pass, which would equate to our own A. The tougher part's going to be in the middle. Where's a B and where's a C? And again, you look at those words: very good, good, almost good, satisfactory, almost satisfactory. Let me just quickly jump here with a footnote to say that most countries, unless they're built on the US model, along the lines of the US model, like Korea, like Japan, like some others, do not have a D concept. the concept of an unsatisfactory pass, the lowest passing grade, but you can't graduate with that average. So that's an easy one. Even when you see a word like sufficient, which implies to you in your mind maybe a D, it probably is not. It's a satisfactory passing grade. So then what you've got to determine is in the middle, where does your B begin and end and your C begin and end before you finally have a failure. And the best way to do that, again, is to use the descriptors. I like to have my grading tiers be more or less even. I like my B range to be as large as my C range, but I will live with a slightly smaller B one because C, after all, means average. That means where most students lie or congregate in the grading scheme of things. So if you have a slightly bigger C range, that's probably okay. It's certainly okay to have a small A range because that's the highest level, and the percentage of students going to get that grade is probably not as high. There are some exceptions. We know, for example, in France, that grading is so severe that for the 20-point grading scale, a goodly portion of that top part, generally speaking, certainly from 16 and on up, some would say 14 and up, that's the A range, so on. France, of course, has a D because they have a grade where they have a situation where when you make below the lowest passing 10 passab, you make an 8 or a 9, that is excused if your overall annual average is a 10 or better. That allows you to continue without having to repeat the course again. So that 8 or 9 becomes a condoned failure, which I would certainly label a D. Otherwise, you're not going to find Ds in most of the rest of the world. With that, I'll leave it, hoping that I more or less answered that question. It was a tough one.
Thanks so much, Robert. That's great. And I think that is a tough question, but I think that is that your explanation was perfect. So I have a couple of questions also that were submitted in advance that have to do with India. The first is, what is the difference between a provisional certificate and a certificate of passing?
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry. I thought you were going to list the other ones.
Oh, would you like, you know what? I can ask the second one too, because.
Why don't you go ahead?
Yeah, so, and the second one is, can you talk about what a deemed university is in India? Is it accredited? And how would you recommend evaluating credit from such an institution?
Okay, thanks. Let's look at the first one. I don't want to spend a lot of time on it because this is a question that of the passing certificate and provisional certificate that has, while it's been around a little while, it's certainly become more prevalent in the last few months or so, at least as far as I'm concerned from what I have seen. First of all, we're not at all surprised about provisional certificates. We know what those are. We've seen them for quite some time now. We know that an Indian university, when it awards a degree, can take quite a long time after the successful completion of the degree through examination process before that diploma, that nice, ornate, large diploma is awarded at a convocation. And so evaluators like ourselves quickly jumped onto the provisional certificate because we saw in that document that it really did say this person successfully completed the exams, has got the degree, and when that convocation happens, they're going to have an ornate diploma. So we've all adopted the provisional certificate as something comparable to the award of degree. We got that into EDGE. We even convinced the Immigration Service, USCIS, that it's okay to accept these. Most schools out there now accept provisional certificates routinely as proof of an award of degree. For example, at UT Austin, we will no longer bar future registration when we ask for an award of degree from a student, because remember, we've admitted them before they got that degree while it was in progress earlier in the year. We will accept that provisional certificate as proof of graduation and therefore remove the bar to future registration. Now, something that's come up recently is the passing certificate. And very briefly, after some digging with some folks at TICEP, and especially with Emily Tse on the Iesc, Emily Say of IRF, who did some digging on this. And I evidently looked at it a year or so back and had forgotten. But basically what we learned is this, that provisional certificate awarding capability has devolved onto autonomous colleges. Remember, and this is important, almost a segue into the next question that Melanie asked about deemed universities. Remember that India, very much like the UK, have teaching institutions, teaching colleges, where the actual instruction takes place, but that this entity, this college, this institute can't award the degree because they're not a university. Okay, it's the university to which they are affiliated that does two things: that that administers the exam, the controller of exams, for example, who grades, who signs those things, those mark sheets you look at, works for the university. But the students are in the college taking the courses, and so they take the university's exams. The second thing the university does is to award the degree. All right, the teaching college cannot do that. But there are some institutions of high quality that are affiliated to universities that have reached such quality that they've been granted autonomy, autonomous status, so they can start to do things on their own. They still can't award degrees. They're not universities, but they can start to do more things. And one of the things that they've recently been able to do is to issue provisional certificates. Okay, fine. We know that, and so we look at this college issuing the provisional certificate and we go, wait a minute, this is not a degree granting university. However, we notice that it's affiliated to the University of whatever, which certainly is recognized by the University Grants Commission and the Indian government. So we accept that provisional certificate from that college, knowing that one day there'll be a beautiful diploma from the University of whatever. Okay, so that's what happened with the provisional certificates. They moved down to some of these autonomous colleges. Now, where did the passing certificate come from? Well, it turns out that when the university gave that right to that autonomous college, and for whatever reason, the autonomous college has not yet produced that provisional certificate, and the student is getting impatient and wants to send paperwork to your university, they ask for something to prove that they've successfully completed the degree program. And what they can, and so they turn to the affiliating university, the big university of whatever. And what happens? They say, well, we can't give you a provisional certificate. The regional college down there where you studied, they can give the provisional certificate. Well, they're not ready to give it yet. Okay, well, we'll give you something. And here's something we can give you. It's called a passing certificate, because that's the only thing that we can, until that diploma comes out, the only thing we can definitively state to the world on your behalf is that you, in fact, passed the exams that we administer. And you did, and we'll give you a certificate to that effect. So just to conclude this piece, so is a passing certificate the same thing as a provisional certificate? In my estimation and belief, no. Provisional certificate is all but a diploma, okay? Passing certificate simply says they passed the exam successfully. Now, I admit that in the case of India, once you pass the exams, the next step that's going to happen is you'll ultimately get your degree. But I'm a bit more conservative in these matters, and so I'm not real happy with a simple passing certificate, proof that you passed the exams. My God, I've got the last mark sheet of the third year or the fourth year. I know you passed the exams, but I'm not happy with calling a passing certificate the equivalent of a provisional certificate. Provisional certificate is to take the place of the diploma until it is awarded. And so that's why I would not consider them the same as equally. Now let's move on to the deemed university question very quickly. It's pretty straightforward. There are a number of higher education institutions in India that have reached such a high level of quality and all that they do, particularly in certain course areas, certain fields, such as engineering or such as pharmacy or something along those lines, that the government has determined they have reached a level of quality that they should be considered on the same level and given all the same rights and privileges of a university with the actual university in their title. These higher education institutions have their own names. They're named after people perhaps or other things. And so they don't necessarily want to put university in that title. They stand alone by the title they've had for however long they've existed. So what happens is that they are considered to be deemed to be a university. And that's an important level because it's raised them from, say, an autonomous college, like we were talking about a moment ago, that was part of a bigger university. Suddenly they are at university level, able to award degrees and control their syllabuses and the exams and all of that. And so these institutions reach that status because the UGC, the University Grants Commission, advises or recommends to the central government, to the Department of Higher Education, that they indeed be considered deemed to be a university, placing them right up there with all those universities you find. And one of the best resources you can get beyond what we have for you in the EDGE resources page would be the Indian University's Handbook. The bad news is it's about $600. The good news is it has a wealth of information. The latest one, the 34th edition, I believe it is, I actually rescued that before the world ended last March and brought it home. It's in 2 massive volumes, and A to Z, it's all the universities and deemed universities that are recognized by the UGC, their affiliated colleges, and the requirements and duration of degrees and programs, entry requirements, all of that kind of thing. It's a wonderful resource. It's put out by the Association of Indian Universities. Anyway, a deemed university then is the equivalent of a university like Anna University, like University of Madras, except that it doesn't have university in its title, but the UGC has recommended and has received the same level of recognition and university level status that a university has.
That's excellent, Robert. Thank you so much. I have a couple of comments that I just want to share that came from the Q&A and from the chat. We have one comment from Todd Colvard, who says that in physical therapy education, a passing certificate is issued upon completion of the last annual exam, but the student has yet to complete the post-didactic internship. We do not treat it like a provisional certificate at FCCPT. So that's I thought a good comment to share with everyone.
And Melanie, if I could just jump in, and first
Yes.
of all, thank you, Todd, for bringing that forward. That's an excellent example. And it fills in the gap that I left in my explanation earlier when I said, we know that when they pass the exams, they're pretty much done. I completely forgot that there are certain fields in which that's not the case. And you just pointed out a very, very important one. And so I thank you for that. But that's a good, solid reason why a passing certificate is not a provisional certificate. Thank you, Todd.
Perfect. Thank you, Robert. Also, just one other note, there was a question in Q&A that came up that I've answered in print, but I just wanted to put it out there that while we don't provide a written transcript of the conversations that happen at the user group meetings, these are recorded and they are housed in the webinar archive. And so if you want to go back and take some notes or something like that, you can absolutely do that by reviewing the recording. There may be a delay in posting the recording this week. Generally, those are posted very, very quickly. But this week, because we're having this website issue, I would imagine that there might be a delay and you might not see that recording posted until either tomorrow or next week. So just as an FYI. Another question that has been asked in the Q&A is about accents. And so I'm going to read the question and then I'm going to pass it to Drew because this is something that we talk about all the time. So sometimes the accents aren't added in translations, or a degree may have a slightly different name. Does the search feature display degrees that may be similar to our spelling? And Drew, do you want to talk about search and accents and some of the things that we're thinking about in that area?
Yeah, absolutely, Melanie. Thanks. So when it comes to anytime you do a translation, sometimes there is one generally accepted way to translate from one language to another. And as you've mentioned, sometimes there are a multitude of ways that one might translate this. My best recommendation for you using that search filter would be that you don't have to type in the full name of the degree, just a few letters, and it doesn't have to be at the beginning of the credential that you're searching for. It can be in the middle. So if you're having trouble finding that particular degree, as you filter through, they will generally be listed from earliest on in the student's educational pathway, think primary school, and at the bottom you're going to get all the way up to your doctoral level, that final cycle, and so you're generally going to be progressing along that pathway. So my recommendations would be to either use just a part of the degree name to search generally within that. There's also a secondary filtering mechanism that you can use on within the credentials module that can separate into various levels of education there. But if you misspell it as it is written in our database, it is not going to find it because it's more of a filter rather than trying to understand precisely what you have written in there. One of the things that is now present within Edge that we are going through, there is a new way that we can use and showcase symbols and character-based languages rather than just a translation into a Romanized form. So that is not something that has been completed yet, but as time progresses, you will be able to search by native character-based names for credentials as well. Thanks, Melanie.
Thanks, Drew. Appreciate that. That is something that we're always thinking about. And as we have developed the newest version of Edge, the conversation around search function and multiple languages and accents and spelling is quite complicated. And we pay very close attention to it and are always talking about it. It comes up in like every development meeting. So thanks, that's really helpful. There's a question about the initiative in March and the online courses. So I thought I would give a short recap of what I can share up to this point. And so maybe, can you, Michael, go back a couple of slides to the online course? Yes, that's the one. And so just a little bit more detail and honestly, we would have had a web page up already this week that has these details, but unfortunately, because we're having this web issue, we're not publishing the new page yet. But I expect by next week you'll see it on the ACRO website. But we are launching 10 courses. These 10 courses will be self-paced courses. And they have assessments built in. And so it's not just going through the material, but there are also some interactive features where you have activities that you need to complete and assessments that you need to pass in order to earn the badge that is associated with the course. And so these will be available right around March 8th. They are for purchase, they are not free, but we're working hard to make them very affordable. So we expect them to price, depending on the size of the module, they'll be between $100 and $200, depending on the module. And they will give you access to earning that credential badge, which then becomes a stackable credential. We have lots more planned around working with the ACRO International Institutes and doing lots more virtual on-site kind of trainings. That will all roll out over the next couple of months, but the foundation piece are these online courses and we're really excited about them. So, and I see a question, does this replace the winter and summer workshops or in addition to? So Maria, this is not going to replace them, although This year, we are not going to be able to do the Summer Institute in person the way that we would have normally. And so what we are doing is adapting. And this was a direction we wanted to go anyway, but now we're going to be able to do it differently. Our intention with the institutes is to have both a self-paced module piece and a faculty-led piece. And then when it's safe to meet in person, we will also have an in-person piece. And so lots more to share about that in the future as we develop the timeline and the curriculum, but you can expect that we will have an ACRO Institute this summer. The plan right now is to have it in July. I can't share the date just yet, but we're really, really excited to be doing that and to be able to provide this kind of learning in multiple modalities. This is a really important thing to be able to do, as we've seen in the last year. So we're excited. All right. And then I think that is probably what we have time for. Can we go to the next slide? I wanted to share that the ACRO annual meeting is open for registration, and ACRO annual meeting this year is virtual. Early bird registration ends on February 28th, and so we hope that you will go and check it out. I think you'll find that the price point this year, in order to make it more accessible, is quite low, and we hope that we will see lots of you there. And next slide. Drew, do you want to talk about this slide?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've mentioned earlier joining that international activities listserv, which is where you can really connect directly with colleagues when you're developing your own institutional policies. To change your configuration on the Edge mailing list, whenever you receive an email from ACRO, you can go down to the bottom and there's a place where you can manage your preferences right there to receive more information from Edge. And I always encourage you to subscribe to the ACRO Connect newsletter. It's really a good way to look into what we as an association are working on, what we're doing, and a way to get to know us a little bit better too.
Melanie, you're muted if you're trying to speak.
Darn it. I was going to say, yes, thanks again for joining us this afternoon. We hope to see you at the Edge user group next month, which will be just before our annual meeting. And until then, stay safe. And for those of you in Texas, stay warm. Take care.